bass, Geddy Lee, Jaco Pastorius, right? Finger guys. And then there's a bunch of people that play with a pick. One of my favorites, of course, Gene Simmons, right? Because spitting blood, breathing fire, and playing bass with a pick is just cool, period, right? There's that other guy, Sting. He plays with a pick once in a while. And there's that other guy, Sir Paul McCartney, I think is his name, right? Probably the most famous bass player ever, plays with a pick. So my conclusion is that you use whatever is best, whatever works. As we started writing a lot of the Megadeth material in the 1983 when we formed the band, you know, I was trying to play a lot of this stuff with my fingers, you know, like... Right, it's kind of that Steve Harris, Iron Maiden, that galloping thing, right, which he does so well, with two fingers, mind you, right? I mean, he's just from another planet. I don't know how he does that. But, you know, I grew up on, of course, Steve Harris and Judas Priest and Scorpions and, you know, Kiss and all this stuff. In fact, Tom, you have the, where is Tom? He has got the, as soon as I saw him today, he's got that killer Kiss Destroyer shirt on. And just a note, historical footnote, I have cousins here, a family from, my cousin Brad right here. I think I bought that Kiss Destroyer tape at, like, by the mall or something, right there by SeaTac Airport, right? I drove past it last night. So, my cousins and that Kiss Destroyer cassette back in, I think, 1976 got me into this whole mess. That's why I'm even here today. So thank you, Brad. Appreciate that. That was nice of you. So anytime I see a Kiss Destroyer shirt, I kind of freak out, you know. And I love John Fives. He's got that Knights in Satan Service, right? Instagram account, right? Which is awesome. Because I don't know if you know, but back in the day, the religious people that used to say KISS stood for Knights in Satan Service, which I don't think it does. But we can probably find out, but I don't think it does. So anyway, a lot of good fun with all that. But, you know, I used to try to emulate my heroes, you know, and play like how they played. And, you know, a lot of guys had Fender basses into SVT, you know, Ampegs, and that tone never worked for me, you know, so I ended up kind of going for a, you know, getting amplification and gear, and I talk a little bit about gear since we're at a gear event today, and I'm going to get in the room here a little later and see what's there, but, you know, I kind of built a tone around what how I play, and, you know, that early stuff playing with fingers, you know, it just didn't sound good, so, you know, you play like, you know, Megadeth song Devil's Island, and it sounds okay, and I guess you can kind of play it like that, but then I grabbed a pick, especially when there's a click track going, right, a metronome. Anybody's recorded, you know about the click track. It can either be your friend or your foe, right? It's either evil or, right? So then all of a sudden I used a pick, all of a sudden there was clarity and tone, and the producer wasn't looking at me funny like, how come you can't play well, David, you know, how come you're not in time, right? So if anybody's ever recorded, what's the first thing you find out when you record? You suck, right? You're not really as good as you thought you were, especially when you put up against the click track and all of a sudden, you know, things are moving around. It's also a good way to tell how good your drummer is, if in doubt, and, you know, not that we're meant to put everybody to the acid test, but you know, that click track, which is true time, that thing never wavers. Us humans, we kind of move around. And of course, that's what makes music human, makes it sound cool and vibrates with us. That's what we like about it. In fact, I just saw an app. A friend of mine came to me about a new program that uses artificial intelligence. And he took a riff that I had written, and this, you know, the computer started to sort of create more notes and kind of write its own version of my song. I think their goal is to have a song that goes continually for a year, right, using artificial intelligence. And the first thing I noticed is that it was pretty smart right away. Like when it heard the riff, it kind of copied similar to that, and it probably uses some algorithms where it uses however many mathematical calculations of how many legal notes it can grab out of a scale or something like that, and it starts to, you know, create a song. And what I noticed is the further it got away from my riff, the more it just sounded like a computer making notes, right? So we like the human factor. We like all that. But, you know, the thing of it is how do we get a bunch of humans to play well together? And I can say this year, as we celebrate 35 years of Megadeth, it's taken about 35 years for us to play pretty good now. I listened back to early, yeah, thank you, by the way. We wouldn't be here for 35 years if you guys didn't buy and listen to our music and come to our concerts, so thank you for that. We appreciate that. And some fans finding some really cool stories and cool pictures on the internet. In fact, a lot of old stuff. I started a little hashtag called Every Bass Has a Story. And I start to write little stories because I remember these stories around the bass. You know, to me, it's kind of like you look at the family photo album, you go, oh, there's Joe, and there's Susie, and there's, you know, Uncle Tom, whoever. And you remember. Well, for me, they're kind of all anchored around a bass. You know, it's like, oh, I remember when we played that show in Berkeley, California, and, you know, Kerry King from Slayer was playing guitar with us, and, you know, it was when we still had The Conjuring, but before the lyrics were in The Conjuring, so it was just this kind of music. Can't remember how the heck thing even goes. You haven't played it in so long, right? We took it you know, it's one of these songs, Dave said, we're never playing it again. And we would put it in the set, we would take it out, we'd put it in, we'd take it out. Because some songs work really well because they've got this, kind of like that first track I started with, Holy Wars, has this really dynamic, you know, thing around it. And other songs sound really good on record, and they don't translate as well live. So if you wonder sometimes why we don't play certain songs live, that's why. It's because they're great listening songs, not such a good concert song. And The Conjuring was one of those tunes, and it has some lyrical content that Dave didn't want to sing anymore, so he said, we're never playing it again. I've never heard so many requests for a song that once you say you're never playing it again, right? No one really cared whether you played it or not when you did play it. And then all of a sudden when you do the takeaway, I guess it's like sales, right? You do the takeaway and know, hey, I want the car after all, you know, when they take it off the table. So we've had songs like that over the years that have kind of gone, you know, in and out of our set. But, you know, back to, you know, when I was growing up in the late 70s and, you know, into the early 80s, a lot of, you know, playing, especially Jocko. I mean, I think Jocko did for the bass probably what like Eddie Van Halen did for the guitar. You know, he really changed the course of it. And a lot of it, I was always kind of focusing, everything was over here on the left hand, all these, you know, wicked playing and everything. You know, even, you know, tapping became, you know, all this stuff that guitar players were doing came over to the bass world. And then by the time I got to LA, we start Megadeth, and we're working on these songs, which were pretty progressive by nature. You know, a lot of stuff, which I liked. I loved that we were creating a new sound, a new genre, a new style. But as, you know, I realized that more and more of our sound was about this hand, right? It was about the plucking hand. And I read a great quote from Fieldy from Korn. I think it was in like a Bass Player magazine. He had this quote, and I think he's dead on the money with it. You know, our hand that we pluck or pick with is probably the hand we sign our name with. Therefore, it is our signature. Our signature sound comes from the plucking hand, from the picking hand. Now, it's not to diminish what we're doing over here with the notes and our choice of notes, but what we do over here so much is always based, you know, that really is how we sign our name. So most of the dynamics that I get from playing on the bass happen from this hand. And so much of it is around the muting, because it isn't, you know, there's a couple types of ways to obviously play. One is just the old punk rock style, you know, which looks really cool. But I found that in order to sound a little better, I kind of had to raise my bass up a little bit. And ironically, not to do a shameless self-promotion, but I actually designed a strap with Groove Gear, which actually we launched it at NAMM. And the point of it is that you can adjust, it's a two-way adjustment. So you can adjust the strap up this way. So if you want to get your hand up higher, which I tend to do, you can do that. And then you can also adjust it on the back so you can get that thing. If you notice, like Robert Trujillo, for instance, from Metallica, or another great player that I like to reference, Robert DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots, you know, they play low like this because they're finger players, right? And it's almost like taking the upright bass, excuse me, right? Where you're playing like upright, and you can sort of drop that down, and it's kind of the same thing, right? You're just kind of taking it from up here and dropping it down here. But as a pick player, it's a little harder. You kind of almost have to approach it a little more like guitar, where Yeah, Jimmy Page, of course, you know, had his guitar low. But in order to do the muting properly, I have to have it up a little bit higher so that I'm able to actually, you know, mute that thing. And sometimes I'll even change in between songs. You know, if I've got one song that, you know, if I've got kind of like a symphony of destruction, and I kind of drop the bass a little bit, rock a little more, and then by the time we get to like an encore, something like we do with Holy Wars, that track I just started with, have to have it up a little higher just to be able to execute the part right? Because so much of that song and those parts are all are kind of the execution of it is often around the right hand and a lot of that muting right there.